We've known for years that China's navy is the largest in the world, but now a new US government probe finds that China's dominance over the oceans is due to an unreasonable level of control over the shipbuilding, maritime and logistics sectors. China's shipbuilding capacity is more than 230 times larger than that of the US, and in the words of maritime expert Thomas Shugart, the scale just almost is hard to fathom. The degree to which it dwarfs American shipbuilding is just unbelievable, given the implications for any Taiwan contingency as well as great power competition. Can the US, which represents just 1% of global shipbuilding, do anything about Beijing's stronghold over the seas? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Min Kavat. Joining us today are William Stanton, former American Institute in Taiwan director, and Stephen Tan, International Policy Advisory Group Managing Director. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. Data from the probe reveals that China's share of the $150 billion global shipbuilding industry has grown from approximately 5% in 1999 to over 50% by 2023. Once a dominant force in the industry, the US now holds less than 1% of the market share. Meanwhile, South Korea on 26%, Japan on 14% and the EU on 5% rank behind China. More recent 2024 figures by Beijing's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology on January 16th indicate that China accounted for 55.7% of completed shipbuilding volume and 74.1% of new orders. Stephen, let me come to you first. So there's a lot of data in this investigation, in this report. Can you give us perhaps just a simple understanding, a simple picture of the situation?
Okay, well, this is a complicated situation, but let me try my best to make it as straightforward and simple as it is. China is building ships for commercial use as well as for military use. At the same time, on the same side, with heavy subsidies from the state-owned enterprises and the CCP. And that's where the problem is. That's how the unfair trade practices and unjustifiability and unreasonableness come along. Now, we're looking at those issues to see what happened to the U.S. capacity of shipbuilding. Okay,
so Bill, let's now get into some of the figures. So I rattled off some of that market share. What's the significance of those particular figures for you?
Well, it's just that China's not only dominating military shipping, but it's also now, dominating commercial. And because of the strength of that capacity, shipping capacity, it's also having an influence on trade with other countries who are becoming more and more dependent on Chinese shipbuilding rather than on any other country. So that kind of domination is troubling because, of course, China is not a friendly power to the United States. So the big question is, yes, we can say it's unreasonable, but China's trade practices have always been unreasonable and self-serving, of course. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? And I think what we need to do, actually, is, for one thing, in terms of the military navy, we need to put more money into it. Now, the big question is whether that's going to be possible, because Donald Trump is saying he's going to cut taxes. At the same time, he's talked in the past about, building a stronger navy. What's going to come out of that? It's not clear.
Because peace through strength would indicate that there needs to be a much higher investment in the US military. Stephen, so the petitioners for the report, many from steel industry,
right.
They said that the entrenchment of China's dominance in these sectors would mean that US international trade, and let me quote, would be carried out on vessels made in China, financed by state-owned Chinese institutions, owned by Chinese shipping companies, and reliant on a global maritime and logistics infrastructure increasingly dominated by China. So, of course, this doesn't just apply to US international trade. So what are the full implications of the world's global trade being entirely dependent on China?
Well, I think dependence itself is a risky proposition that going forward all the ships, primarily commercial ships, but also the power of the Navy, the CCP Navy or the PLA Navy that have enter into a totally different landscape. My data shows that CCP substantially and highly subsidize the construction costs of the shipbuilding, up to 20% of its overall cost. And also between 2010 to 2018, the Chinese state-owned banks financed up to 120 billion US dollars at a very low interest rate to the shipbuilding industry. And then also, since 2006, CCP has officially named shipbuilding as one of the 7 major areas of industry developments, primarily controlled by the state-owned enterprises. And also, the sites of the shipbuilding, as you can see, are for dual use. Not the ships for dual use, but the manufacturing site itself. They're building the Navy vessels at the same time taking orders to build the commercial ships.
But you mentioned about the 5-year plans of the CCP.
Right.
Stephen, if we could just cover a little bit of that. So does it appear that the earliest year that we see shipbuilding as being identified is 2001?
Right. It's ever since year 2000, I think. If you look at their 5-year plan, the first time that you see the word or the term shipbuilding in their official document is the year 2001, where CCP officially identify and launch the industry for the shipbuilding. And to be honest, for the past 25 years, CCP has been quite successful in terms of grabbing the market shares of that industry, not just shipbuilding, but also shipbuilding, maritime, and logistics, all in all. With the mingling the civil and military use of the construction size and heavy subsidies by the state-owned enterprises and the state-owned banks. So those are the efforts of 3 decades or 2.5 decades by now. Until now, all of a sudden, the whole world realized that China got half the market share in the whole world.
A little bit late.
Right.
Yeah. In 2006, China designated shipping as one of the 7 strategic industries over which state-owned enterprises should, quote, maintain absolute control. And in China's Made in China 2025 strategy, shipbuilding was identified as one of 10 priority sectors in which China would seek to dominate global commerce by 2025. So absolutely what you're saying, this is strategic, and it's been happening over the past 25 years. So in 2022, satellite images showed that Taiwan's Evergreen Marine hulls were being built in the same Chinese shipyard, as Stephen mentioned, as Chinese cruisers and destroyers. Close by was China's newest aircraft carrier, the Fujian. Evergreen purchased 44 vessels from China since 2018, all but 2 of which were ordered from shipyards that produce Chinese warships, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. CSIS said the imagery, quote, suggests that there is a direct sharing of resources between military and civilian operations at China's key shipyards. The USTR's 301 probe said, quote, available evidence indicates that profits from foreign orders likely lower the cost of upgrading China's Navy. China's targeted dominance of the maritime, logistics and shipbuilding sectors also, quote, serve a broader purpose to strengthen all of China's instruments of national power through China's military-civil fusion strategy. So through that strategy, China seeks to become a world-class military. Bill, let me bring you back into the conversation. So we mentioned about the symbiosis between the commercial side of the shipping as well as China's military, its navy. For you, I mean, you obviously you were in Taiwan in 2022. How concerning to you were the images of Taiwan's Evergreen vessels when they were shown very, very close to China's warships and the Fujian?
Yeah, well, it is concerning, and I met once, I think, with the CEO of Evergreen, and we had a very pleasant conversation, but I wasn't aware at that time that Evergreen was getting most of its hulls, most of its ships being built in China. So that's a problem for Taiwan as well, because it's becoming very dependent on the PRC. So it goes back a long way, and articles have been, that I've found, going back to 2017, 18, that period, we're already talking about the problem of Chinese domination of the seas, growing military and also commercial prowess. So I think we're, in a way, the USTR report is coming a little bit late. Not they've done a good job, but also now to say, well, again, it's unreasonable how they're doing things. I think it's a little bit, everything that the PRC does tends to be unreasonable because they do everything in their own self-interest. So we have to figure out ways that we can catch up and do better, right. Taiwan as well as the US.
Stephen, can we look at, in the event of a conflict, if the fear is that China could leverage this maritime dominance, basically it could choke the American economy because of its control over the maritime shipping industry, but it could also, because of its prowess in shipbuilding, it can scale up, it can replace, it can repair those ships that are being used in conflict much faster than the US or their allies. Was it planned all along over the past 25 years, aimed at this military dominance?
I think it's well planned by the CCP that it's for the dual benefits for China. Both in terms of building up the commercial shipbuilding industry and also to strengthen its capacity in the naval build-up. And now that you pointed out correctly that there is a potential risk of choking the shipbuilding industry worldwide, and at the same time reducing the cost, increasing the capacity for the military ships. So I think all in all, you look back, it was 25 years ago that China identified this clearly. It's been quite successful without much notice. Well, actually, industries do know about it, and then those issue of concern has just been recently identified. One of the actually on the phone call when President Trump placed with President Yoon of South Korea, one of the issues that he mentioned was to collaborate with South Korea's shipbuilding capacity in the industry to try to build up more ships. It's both commercial and military. So I think that issue of concern is now obviously bipartisan. What we're going to do about this is the next question, big question. I don't necessarily think that increasing the tariffs under Section 301 will do the trick. There got to be something else. Now it's awareness built up. There will be something else that increasing the budgets, some sort of collaborations between the U.S., South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, and also some measures. I think many of those could be done by the executive orders, and some others will have to be done by the legislature on the Congress. So I think all in all, this is just the beginning. I think we should be talking more about this. And there is a particular article saying that forget about the chips. It's more about shipbuilding.
That's very interesting.
People put a lot of attention on the semiconductor chips. It is very important. But if you look at the shipbuilding capacity, exponentially increased by the Chinese, and this is as important as it is that we should pay more attention to.
Right, and I just quickly want to ask Bill, so in the US scenario, there isn't, how is it different to the Chinese example model. How does that differ in the US situation?
Well, I guess we don't directly subsidize commercial construction of shipping. We, of course, provide the Navy, but then they have to contract it out. And, it's a more indirect approach. The Chinese government can just decide we're going to build more ships and order that to happen, and it happens. Unfortunately, in the U.S., things are not so simple. I'm a bit pessimistic unless under President Trump, he begins to take the initiative to put more money, provide more support, both for commercial shipping construction, but also for the U.S. Navy.
Okay, as the U.S. Trade Representative's Section 301 trade investigation has concluded that China leverages fiscal support, erects barriers for foreign companies, enforces technology transfers, engages in intellectual property theft, makes massive investments in and implements procurement policies to give China's shipbuilding and maritime industries an unfair advantage. However, China immediately denied these allegations. Take a look.
我愿强调指出，拜登政府对中国海事、物流和造船业发起301调查，严重违背世贸规则，是彻头彻尾的保护主义行径。中方对此强烈不满，坚决反对，已经多次表明我们的立场。
So, Stephen, can there be an argument that does back up what the Chinese are saying, that it is, through technological innovation that it has done so well in this industry?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Section 301, which is, a U.S. domestic law, unfair trade practices as defined within the law, it is robust. It has its own definition. From the outlook, the heavy subsidies by the CCP, 127 billion US dollars subsidy or finance within the 8-year time frame by the state-owned enterprise and the banks of China. I think that speaks for itself. I don't think that's justifiable, and I think Section 301 seems to be underway, but then I think it's bipartisan. I think the Trump administration will pick it up. But then the question, as I just raised it earlier, is that would that address the issue? Would you, if you increase 100% tariffs on the Chinese-built ships, would this going to substantially drop its market share from 50% to 15%? I don't know, but I doubt it. And then I think building up the strength, the shipbuilding strength among the like-minded countries seems to be something that is high on the priority. And I hope that President Trump has paid sufficient attention and actions in this regard, and I think this is something that U.S. standing alone cannot do it by itself. You have to work with other countries, including Taiwan.
Right. Yeah. So the argument for the alliance building that was enshrined by the Biden administration. Bill, let's talk a little bit about, because it seems to me that what we're saying is actually an investigation into the CCP structure system itself, into an authoritarian system that is state-driven, which is able to, make these massive investments and basically through that distort the industry. For you, was there a sense, reading through the report, that the idea of competition, market competition, is completely thrown out of the window in this system?
I think so. I mean, all's fair in love and war, and certainly in terms of trade, China will do whatever's necessary. Since the U.S. is abiding by certain rules, and I think President Trump has already indicated he would look favorably on getting the South Koreans to help build some of our shipping. Back in '93, though, there was a law passed that no foreign country can be responsible for building the hulls of U.S. military vessels, and without the express authorization of the president. So president would have to do that, but then, it would be fair for us to proceed and get some help.
Stephen, moving back to kind of the synergies that the investigation found, that symbiosis that I talked about, the commercial shipbuilding as well as, for the Chinese Navy itself. But actually that symbiotic relationship the investigation found was much more extensive. For example, it basically said that the Chinese shipbuilding and dominance over maritime and logistics as well, not just shipbuilding, was in lockstep with the Chinese economic development over the past few decades. Can you talk to us about some of those relationships, those interdependent relationships that was found?
Well, I think maritime and logistics and the shipbuilding, if you look at this from the outset, it's separate industries but all interrelated, and that's part of the sort of the supply chain that China faces in the whole world.
Yeah. So tell us about your relationship between the ports and the shipbuilding, and then the logistical. The logistics, for example, there was the initiative by U.S. Congress about Lodging, wasn't there, where they basically banned the Pentagon from using any of the ports that used this particular software system.
Well, yeah, Lodging is sort of the Chinese logistic platform that is being used. Then I think that there's a recent legislation passed by the U.S. Congress on that, basically restricting all this sort of the U.S. ships that is used in that system. And I think I think what's more important is that if you look at the system, the CCP or the Chinese system, everything is interrelated and everything is government control and everything is party control, and that's where the problem is. In the United States, in the Western world, even in South Korea, you don't see that. You don't see commercial shipbuilding, mingling with the military use or Navy shipbuilding, and you don't see the government heavily subsidizing the shipbuilding for the commercial vessels, and that's where the problem is. And if Chinese has the more than 2 centuries of stated policy of pursuing that to face the whole world of lingering the maritime and the shipbuilding and the logistics, and that strength is something of a threat at the moment. And that threat itself, if it cannot be properly addressed, and later on that will cause a major issue. When I say issue, it's not commercial issue, a major security issue of concern, both to the United States and the rest of the world.
Bill?
I was just going to add that from what I've seen, apparently the Chinese logistics system is now installed in more than 20 ports around the world. So unfortunately, this has an influence also about China's relations with its friends and partners around the world. And that means it's really become a global issue. It's not just the U.S. versus China.
Yeah. And it does seem to touch on so many different industries. Bill, I'll quote to you in the report, it says, where Chinese firms operate ports, they appear to modify the host country's trade toward China and away from trade partners. So this control that Stephen has spoken about, it's a lot more than we would think from the surface.
It's like the concern about TikTok. The concern isn't only that they gather data, but also that they implant in all the young people and others who use it certain concepts which are misleading ideas, and they certainly don't convey anything that would be negative about the Chinese system.
So just to give you the final words as we conclude the show, do you see this sector or this industry as simply being a symbol for the power and the influence of China, the CCP, you know,
I do.
as a whole, and therefore, what do we do about that?
Well, first step is to identify the problem, which we've already done. Now it's going to take a lot of smart people, you know, to take the initiative to take concrete steps that are going to address it. And that's very much going to be on the shoulders of the Trump administration as they come in. Among all the things they've promised to do, you know, I don't know what priority they're going to give to the U.S. Navy and U.S. shipping, but they clearly need to do that.
Right. Okay, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much for joining us today, William Stanton and Stephen Tan. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.
Taiwan Plus original series, Making Waves Beyond Taiwan. The Pursuit of a Cinematic Dream, Tsai Ming-liang, New York Festival's TV and Film Awards, Bronze Award. A documentary where Tsai reflects on his cinematic process and the future of his career. Road to Legacy, 57th Golden Bell Awards, Best Sound Design. A series that introduces 10 indie artists and bands and their road to musical stardom. More Film Festival approved Taiwan Plus originals. Bringing Taiwan to the world. Only on Taiwan Plus.